Welcome to the Focus Podcast. I'm your host, Tara Lee, and today's conversation is one I know you're going to love. My guest is Eileen Noyes, author, speaker, and host of the Unsidelined Life podcast. She is a former NFL wife, a mom of 15 in a blended family, and the founder of Lady Bellator, a movement dedicated to helping women rise up and rediscover their God-given identity. Through her books, Sideline No More and Rise Up Lady Bellator, Eileen shares stories and strategies for resilience, faith, and overcoming adversity. Today, we're diving into how to recognize emotional blind spots and how to stay connected to yourself and your loved ones in the middle of a busy or high-pressure seasons, and why vulnerability is so essential in building strong families and relationships. This is a powerful, faith-filled conversation about moving from surviving in the background to thriving as your authentic self. So let's dive in. Hey there, welcome to the Focus Podcast with Tara Lee. This is the place where we talk about real life, real relationships, and how to grow through it all. If you're looking for simple mindset shifts, better communication, and deeper connections, you're in the right spot. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Focus Podcast with Tara Lee. I am your host, and today I have a special guest, Eileen Noyes. Did I say that right?
You did. I usually say Noyes or something like that. So
Okay, well that's good because I was going to ask you before we started, but that's good that I said it right. She is an author and speaker and mentor and host of the podcast, the Unsidelined Life podcast, right? She's a former NFL wife and mom of 15 in a blended family, and founder of Lady Bellator, which I'm super excited to learn more about. And I also want to have you talk a little bit about your two books that you have too. So I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about that, because I have so many questions, but I want to get you started here first. So tell us a little bit about.
Okay, well, so it says I know on paper it's 15. I do have my 8. My husband, who we've only been married for 4 years, he has a 7. But it's never like all 15. They've not even all met. So that because his are more, well, yeah, we were from the Midwest, or we lived in the Midwest. That's where we met. So his are Denver and Chicago area. So his oldest 2 and his youngest 2 are the ones that we, interact and we see most. But it's good. I mean, not that there's, it's just all dynamics of relationship and age and things like that. So I don't want to take the credit that I'm like parenting and momming, 15, because they do have their own moms. And so it's definitely like, yeah, it's just part of,
But you have space in your heart for them all, right?
Gosh,
Definitely.
it's awesome because, I mean, in a blended family and in those dynamics, it's always tough, and you're dealing with, different parents and things like that. But I love that, the ones that I have relationship with, it's good, and the ones that I don't, it's just because there's just not been that much time, and so when I get all of them, it's been awesome. But the ones I do, his oldest 2, so his oldest is as a boy or a man, and he has 2, oh gosh, is it 3? 2 kids, and then his daughter has a newborn. I think she's like 3 or 4 months now, but my and the wife of the oldest, I mean, we have relationship where they call me and they ask me to pray with them. So it's like such a blessing. And then the youngest 2, 13 and 16, they totally get along with my kids, and they talk. The kids talk way more than I talk to them. So it is a blessing for sure. Like I'm super grateful to even have like this dynamics, especially when it could be totally different. So I look at it as an opportunity of really praying over them and leaving legacy, that in these situations that God makes good out of that. So yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Blessing. Okay, so now to get to the books. The first one that I wrote was called Sideline No More. And it's, the little title the tagline was helping pro athlete wives get out of the shadows to live, or get off the bench to live out their God-given purpose. And so this book really stem from my situation as one who, left all the things that I was doing. I had my, job. I loved it. I had my community, I had my church, I had my family all close to me. But in that situation where my first husband, he went to the NFL, I followed suit and just followed him. So dropped everything. It was in Green Bay. So I left everything in San Diego and joined him. And so in that situation where you have your identity, you have your purpose, you have your community, and then to step into something where you don't, I mean, I didn't know anybody, but my husband at the time. And so in every way, it was sidelined. It was, just kind of putting your dreams and putting everything just kind of on hold and putting them on the shelf to be in that situation. And then not only that, there's the pressures, there's the stress, there's the finances, there's all those things that in this book particularly, I address these women who are in this situation like, hey, I know this is hard. I know you lose your identity. I know that you're being challenged and it's almost like you're not only in competition with like the groupies and things like that, but the fans and the like all the attaboys and all the, hey, everybody loves you, but you come home to us and it's like, hey, can you pay the bills? Can you take out the trash? Can you, spend time with the kids? So there's just certain things that the outside world doesn't quite understand. And even for me, I mean, I had a shopping addiction for a long period of time because that was my way of coping with, just voids in the relationship at times, just not knowing my purpose. So I had my kids, but there was definitely just different challenges that came with that. And just having an influx of money where if you don't know how to handle it or if you have issues, it's just different challenges that come your way. And then that last chapter, the last two chapters have to do with the transition out of the game, which I believe is super hard. And in my case, we actually did everything in a sense textbook. We took care of the finances, we took care of the kids, we had God first. Everything was well, but then afterward, after our daughter, she's number 7 in the mix, only have one daughter. Unfortunately, he found this religious teaching, and I don't want to say too much about, it, but basically it was women aren't created in the image of God. We're property, kids are property, polygamy is okay. So basically, all the things that we were in covenant through a biblical marriage was not that way. And so I came to a crossroads of like, okay, this is not as unto the Lord anymore. So all those things, I mean, this is a very condensed version of the fact that it did end up in divorce. And so Sideline showed up in a different way this time around. Sideline thinking that I'm not married anymore, life is done, credibility is done, witness as a Christian is done. You just feel like you're disqualified or you're kind of like less than, And so God challenged me and worked with me through all that. And that's where actually the second book came through is Rise Up Lady Bellator. And so I challenged the woman who is family devoted that she has to get off the bench to live out her God-given purpose and that she's not sidelined with whatever sidelines her. It could be, hard time in the marriage. It could be that your whole life is devoted for the kids and you forget who you are. It could be your health. It could be so many different things. And so it was kind of just basically a broadened version of the first book, but then of course with what I went through, it expanded in a different way. So I will say, and I'll just say this because I know you have a lot of questions, but Rise Up Lady Bellator. So the name Lady Bellator was given to me by the Lord. Bellator means warrior, and lady it has to do with the royalty piece. So in this, she is royalty and she's a warrior. She's the one who stands in the gap and who is the one who is, the matriarch of the home, but she is the one who stands in the gap for her marriage, who stands in the gap for her kids. And she's the one that, when I say warrior, she's the one who's spiritually in battle. She's the one that is the most aware. And so she's the one that is royalty who knows her authority, but she's also the warrior who fights. So that's where that name came from. And that's who I'm saying, hey, rise up, because women, us women, us moms, us wives, we kind of we downplay the significance that we have.
Mhm.
And if we don't realize the power and the position and the honor it is to be mom, then everybody misses out, including her. So that's
Yeah.
where all that comes from.
I love it. I love it so much. I've kind of like looked into some of your websites, which we're going to link below too. So I haven't had the chance to read your books yet, but we'll also link those. I'd love to link those, and then also link your podcast too, because I've listened to a couple of episodes. I've been able to prepare for this interview, and you just have some amazing, powerful things that I think women can hear, and I that's why I wanted to talk a little bit more about. I kind of just want to let you just talk, but I did prepare some questions, but I maybe we can just kind of direct it that way too. But if you have something else that I'm like missing too, I want you to make sure you tell me too.
Sure,
But
I do
um,
give long-winded answers, and I tend to, my husband says, answer that question. So that's one thing I think. I know it is, because I'll ask women questions, and we kind of, that's how God wired us, and that's okay. So yeah,
well,
I'm sure
I love it.
we'll cover lots.
I love it so much. So, one of the questions that I had, I know you and I both talk about like emotional blind spots and things like that. What are some blind spots that maybe you have noticed in like high pressure marriages and really just family life?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. High pressure. Okay, well, I mean I'm in it once again. So, I've realized a couple things is I am in a new marriage, and it's 4 years in. And so it's, especially when you have two people with
Mhm.
two totally different personalities, two different backgrounds, two different like history of wounds, and whether it's childhood or marriage. I mean, that in itself is a lot. And so blind spots, I think for me have been not realizing that so much of the things that I had gone through in my first marriage, which I will say this, I felt like God gave me a lot of strength to push through, and there was so much healing for sure that happened after the fact. But one thing that was a major blind spot for me was I didn't realize that I didn't allow myself to feel the emotions of sadness or anger. When things were happening, it was like, okay, in this whole limelight thing, I gotta keep tunnel vision, and I need to like have my blinders on, so that all that I'm doing is focusing on my kids and making sure that they're good, and also obeying God when God says forgive, pray for your enemies, choose joy. I did those things, but and I didn't realize this until just earlier this year, that I had to release that emotion of, you know what, this shouldn't have happened. I am mad. I am angry that I had to start all over, that you were accusing me of all these things, and I had to let that emotion in a healthy way come out, and this release, because it was affecting my second marriage. It was me putting so much pressure on my husband Michael to be all the things that my first one wasn't, or to heal the things that were caused by my first husband. So there's a lot. So I don't even know if, again, it's like a blind spot. I mean, or if that answers the question necessarily, but for sure. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I feel like I've had to deal with, that I didn't realize, wow, this is affecting, me a certain way. So
Yeah, wounds that we have to heal in ourselves before we can really, just share and love and continue in another relationship. Sometimes, otherwise, we would just bring those and, like you were saying, add them on to, hit your new husband is having to carry some of those old wounds that he didn't even cause, and
okay.
you've got to make sure you get through those before. And I think just recognizing that is
Yeah.
something that's huge and powerful. Um, so, as a coach, You are a coach and former NFL wife. You've lived through extreme pressure, and you talked a little bit about that and public visibility. How did you stay connected to yourself during those times and even now, and find your purpose?
So the first time around, it took a while. Um, I looking back, I see how I felt like I needed a label.
Mm,
I had to work through the challenge of I just thought, okay, the ideal NFL wife looks like this. And I envy this person. And we were very similar. It's interesting. So there's actually, and it's in the intro of my book where I talk about this particular woman. Beautiful, like just everything about her was just the way she carried herself. She was very um I know that I carry myself, but it's like she was the just epitome, like when I saw her out in public, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's perfect. And I just remember that something always kept us connected to compare. She was out in Florida. This is, I think her husband played for Miami. But when we met, it was through a Pro Bowl, and I'm just like kind of observing from a distance. Well, then we had our first kids at the same time. And then we had our second kids at the same time. And I think we had our third at the same time. Like, this is crazy. And her husband actually played the same position as the one I did. So I just felt like there was something that was gravitating me toward like comparison. And I
mhm,
remember being pregnant with number four, and I was thinking, I wonder if she's pregnant too. I'm like searching, Googling her, and come to find out that she and her husband were getting divorced. And that was a shock to me. And it just kind of opened my eyes to think like, gosh, like on the outside looking in, we can all put this facade like everything is perfect. So
mhm,
that was one thing that just made me it gave me a reality check that I am here and I can't compare, and I
mhm,
just need to be the best me that God
mhm,
created me to be. I am nothing like when I say personality, she was a pageant, contestant, she was a reporter. I'm never going to be that. And it was just this reality, like, you know what? Like God made me. Embrace that. I'm an introvert. I'm on the quieter side. I don't care for, so that is one thing of just in that limelight. For me, I know that I had to anchor in my identity in Christ to say, you know what, like this is my role. This is my role as helper. I don't, if God wants me to, uh, even the competition with the spouse, I feel like I see that a lot, especially nowadays when it comes to that high profile world. Like if the
mhm,
husband at the end, the pro husband is doing well, then I don't know. It seems like there's a pressure for the woman to have to TikTok and like all
mhm,
Instagram, all those things. It's like she's supposed to have that. So to me, I feel like that pressure is not even the same as what I had to go through. But for me, everything just stems into it is just what does God say about me? Like who am
mhm,
I in Him? I can't even deny that that is the most major thing is to keep my eyes on God. And I'm just going to tell you, just it kind of has nothing necessarily to do with me, but even when I look at my boys and I look at how, they're young, they want to play football, there's that pursuit. And I look at their lives and I think, especially at my age, I look and I go, gosh, football, whatever they want to do, in terms of sports. It's such a short window of time. And my prayer is God, like I pray that they find their purpose, that they see that their purpose in you is so much bigger than football. But it is hard. I can't imagine what they're going through, not only with the name, because their father was a really good, was really good at what he did, but the way that the world praises that kind of stuff. It praises the sports, it praises those accolades. It is a challenge to know, God is pleased with me even if I'm not doing that. But the world is so much louder. And so to me, my prayer for them, just like it was for me, is, you know what? I don't need to focus on what the world glamorizes or highlights or thinks is like making it success, basically. It is me keeping my eyes on God to say, Lord, what pleases you? And boys and my girl, like what is it that God is pleased with in your life, that God has purposed you for. And so it is a constant battle, and it is like, because the world is so loud, social media is so loud. It's all the praises of the world. And so that is my thing, is just knowing like I have to keep my eyes on God. And I pray that my kids and my husband does too. So
Yeah. Yeah, that goes along with what the reason I named this the Focus podcast is something my father used to say is what you focus on expands. And
yeah.
that's true. What you focus on is going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. If you're focusing on something and you're just heading just for that, then that's going to grow. And that, it can mean a lot of different things. And I talk about it a lot in my podcast, but I
Yeah,
think like what you're,
I have to say this real quick. Sorry to cut you off.
hmm
I was thinking of just like what you're saying, but what gets your attention, gets your affection. It's along the lines of that, which again, where you give your affection is what grows. So I just had to say, I'm like, oh, that totally like it's in line
Yep.
with what you say, yes, for sure.
Yep. I love that. And I love, you talked a little bit about Lady Bellator and stuff, like the powerful name. Can you share what it represents a little bit and how it helps women rise up and into their God-given identity?
Sure, yes. Okay, so I love talking about this. So yes, um, I was told, like as I'm learning, as I was figuring out my brand, figuring out the name, someone said, Eileen, you represent that contending matriarch. And I didn't even like the word matriarch. So according to my past, it seemed like it was a feminist word. And realizing who a matriarch is, that she's respected in the community. She's like this wise older woman who's not only respected by the women, but respected by the men. So she's just kind of just a pillar in the community. And so when I had heard that, and I was thinking, okay, like, you know what, like seeing who she is, yes, I receive that. Yeah, I want to step into that. And so again, that lady is the authority piece, meaning the authority in Christ. God says he's given all authority, in heaven to us, just as Jesus did. And so there is that, and then there's that warrior piece. And so when I look at Lady Bellator, basically, she's four pillars. And these four pillars are actually in Proverbs 31, which is it is about the excellent wife or the virtuous woman, that chapter. And so she is the daughter of God. She is the bride, the beloved. She's a contending matriarch, and she's an impact maker inside and outside of the home. And so that's where sometimes, and it's seasonal. Like, a mom, my time when it was all the kids, the little kids, that wasn't my
Mhm.
season necessarily to be outside of the home. And it's okay, so I don't want a woman to feel bad if she's not in that position yet. But now for me, as it's still in transition, I do have, for the most part, I've got a window from 8 to 3 where I can get things done, work on the book, work on the podcast, work on these things, and try to get all as much as I can done, really from 4:30 in the morning, have a break to take the kids to school, and then till 3 to do whatever I need to do, whether housework, cooking, all those things. And then I'm home for them, or really technically not home, driving for them everywhere from basically 3:30 to sometimes 9 o'clock at night, so that I'm there fully for them. And so that's what a Proverbs 31 woman is too. I just remember, I don't know if you ever read that proverb, but I remember reading it, and it's all about how this woman, she takes care of the poor. She's the helper for her husband. She does all these things. And I used to look at that and I used to be discouraged. And I thought, I don't want to read that ever again because I don't fit the bill. I can never be like her. But now what God has shown me is, no, every woman is her. She just looks different in the situation that she's in the family that she's in. And so God had given me a way to embrace it, where I see principles of her and that I want to share with women. Because again, it comes down to the devil wants so badly for us to just shut up, to think that
Mhm.
we're less than. And this is not, I mean, this is, even when I say less than, it is not about us being better than the husband or anything like that. It is knowing our role, but living it out fully, where feels fulfilled too. Because
Mhm.
so much, like so often, it seems that women, we totally neglect ourselves, we totally drain ourselves, and then we're bitter and resentful because we're not being fulfilled. So it's like, hey, like, you can be mom and wife, and you can live out your dreams, and you're better in those areas, and you're affecting, the outside world. So that's who she is.
It makes me want to go back and read it again because it's been a while since I've read that. But I love what you say so much because it can be different. It can look different for all of us. I had a mom who worked outside of the home and she chose to, but at the same time, she kind of needed to. And I think she always felt guilty for that. As many years ago, that just wasn't a thing. Women didn't do that. And so she felt very, especially in church and, when all the church women did not do that. And so I think she felt guilty for that a lot. But I think that just depending on our particular calling and our particular purpose. And, my kids are all grown, sort of grown at this point. They're still here with us, but they're 25, 21, and 19. But so not completely out and away from us yet. But I have less, what's the word? I don't need to, care for them every day or they can
Yeah, it's
take care
not
of
hands
themselves
on,
and stuff.
right? I mean, the baby
And
stages and the diaper stages are totally different. I think it's more mental
yeah.
energy and spiritual energy. So yeah, I mean, it's like mom mothering that shows up in different ways and in different seasons. And to just know that, even in that proverb, she's not doing all those things at the same time. It's just, and you don't see that. I mean, there's so many things in the Bible where it's just like a condensed version. You could see someone's whole life story and it's in a couple of chapters. So we know that there's
Yeah.
so much more that is not necessarily in there. So
hmm Well, and I think how you kind of said that, where you used to read that and think, no, I don't want that. I can't live up to that, or I don't. That's why we need to keep rereading and rereading because different things come out to us and different things will touch us at different times in our lives. And so I think that's very important is your spirituality, your relationship with God, everything is different depending on where you are in your life at that time too.
totally, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can agree with you.
What would you say to the woman listening right now who feels like she's been living her own sidelined life?
Um, get with community. And even when I say that, it's not like a whole community. The Bible says that confess your sins to one another or your issues so that you may be healed. Life is not meant to be alone. And so when I say that, to finally to not isolate yourself and to find one person who you can just open up to, it it opens up everything. It's like this thing that's exposed in the darkness because a lot of times it's just these lies that we tell ourselves that we're not good enough, that we're never, that we're, that we don't matter, all these different things. All it takes is for us to open our mouths to expose it, and let someone give us a reality check. So obviously, the person who you seek should be someone of wise, godly counsel. That's a big part. But of course, even first and before that is crying out to God, like, God, what is my role? What am I to do? What is my purpose? And so those two areas I think are huge because when you seek God and you seek him wholeheartedly, he says that he will be found. And I remember there were times in my hardest moments. I remember this one time, like very particularly, where I was doing laundry. We had this big old laundry room, at that time, I had a 20,000 square foot home. And like I said, everything was there was really good moments and just when things started going awry. I mean, I remember on this hard, like hard floor. And I was just praying and crying out and just like it was so significantly giving him everything and really crying out. And it took a while. Like it wasn't like all of a sudden these prayers were answered. But when I just kept pursuing God and when things started changing, it brought me back to that moment of really crying out to God and giving him everything. So that is a big thing to do is one, seek God, and then two, seek counsel, seek a friend. Don't do that.
Yeah, I agree. And pray, ask God to send you somebody that you can have, whether it's a friend, a neighbor, a coach, a mentor, somebody that can listen and care for your heart too. And I think that's really important. We all need somebody like that because
Yeah.
it's,
That's such a good point. And I do have to say this, like, there was a person who she reached out to me on Messenger. And so we went to the same church. We didn't know each other very well. Um, and this was, oh gosh, at least a year and a half, if not 2 years after the fact. So here we're in Green Bay at the same time. I moved to California where we live right now. And I get a message from her, and she says, "You know what, Eileen, I know you don't know me well, but you've been so strong on my heart that God told me to get a hold of you." And so it's moments like that where, just like you said, God was putting it on her heart to get a hold of me because she was struggling in her marriage. She was struggling in a different way, but it was a high profile marriage because it was a pastor. And so she felt like there was no one who would really understand her because of just the dynamics, the cheating and those things. She was saying, no one's going to believe me. Everybody's going to think I'm crazy. And so for God to put us together and to be able to walk her through those moments where she felt crazy, where she felt so misunderstood, where she felt like everybody was against her, to be able to walk through with someone like that, I know that God says comfort those in their affliction just like I comforted you. And so there are those opportunities where now to see where she was then and to see where she is now, and this is, gosh, it's that's not just the only one, and it is not even about me. I'm not bragging about me. It's that prayer. God, bring me someone. And so, I want to be that answered prayer for someone. And I know that, like I need that. I've had that in my life. And so that's a very powerful prayer.
yeah, I agree. I say that prayer of myself all the time because I do coaching through Peaceful Heart Journey as my business and free 30-minute coaching calls. I have a few slots that I leave open throughout the week for people that may feel the need to just have somebody listen because sometimes we just need to listen. We don't always need, extended help, but maybe just that one time that can help them get clarity and help them feel like they're not going crazy, like you said there, that somebody understands. And I think that's so important that we find those people. So I'm gonna link all my stuff and your stuff down because I
Awesome.
think we definitely will have some listeners that might feel the call, hopefully after this episode, that, okay, I do need to reach out. And maybe you or I will be one of those people, but if not, then hopefully they'll find somebody to be able to find that. And that's my prayer for everybody listening today. Well, do you have anything else that maybe I've missed in talking about or that you wanted to talk about?
Oh gosh, I feel like I talk so much. No, let's see. Um, it's just something. God is for you. Daughter, God is for you. He's never left you, even in those moments where you don't think he's working, he is. And so just trust the process. So much is trusting the process that he is refining you, that he's preparing you, that nothing is wasted. I know I said even a lot there, but I think that we need to hear that because so often, and I know I have to like fight that those moments where I want to quit. I mean, just as a coach, in these moments, I'm still starting up and I'm thinking like, God, this is so easy. It's so much easier to just be home with my kids and to just, kind of stay in my little bubble. But I know that I've been called to purpose and each and every one of us is. And so someone needs our voice. And so as we hear God's voice, then we can be that voice for that other person, just with that whole along the lines of prayer and things like that. And you are doing it. Thank you for yeah, just coaching and doing their podcast because yeah, we all need this.
I agree. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And we'll again link everything below. And thank you so much for your time.
Awesome, Shirley. So nice meeting you. Yes.
You
Again.
too. Thanks for hanging out with me today on the Focus Podcast. If something stood out or helped you in some way, feel free to share it or leave a quick review. It means a lot. Keep showing up, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next episode.